Okay.
Okay, so it'd be good to start with a bit of understanding as to Semicon West, what it is, the objectives you've got there. I don't know if you're launching anything or if you've got a particular message to promote, just your thoughts as to what you're hoping to get out of the event.
Yeah, sure. So as background, I guess maybe this year Semicon West will be the 38th or 39th year that I've been attending the show. So I have a lot of history there and a lot of very positive experiences coming from it for sure. We our business currently is we're growing at a rapid pace, and a lot of that is driven by new technologies, new materials. The one that's most prominent for us is silicon carbide. And second, I would say would be GaN, but compound semiconductors, everybody knows the growth story going on there with all the electrification going on in our society around the world. And so for us, Semicon West is a very important event because a lot of these new technologies and new materials start getting talked about in this type of a forum. So for us, it's a very good place to listen and learn about what the new trends are going on in our industry. It's also, and because we're moving in a lot of these fast-paced technology areas, it's also very good from us for the standpoint that we can share with our customers a lot of the technical advancements and new applications and technologies that we're bringing to market, because it's an important message for them because they really start trying to stay on the leading edge of this information, and that's why Semicon West is evolved into what it is. So yeah, for us, it's a very important opportunity to listen and learn from our customers, as well as share a lot of highlights of advancements that we're working on, which are multiple and significant advances, I would say, that we're working on. Much faster paced than if you look at, say, high volume manufacturing of CMOS devices on silicon, that moves at a different pace than we do. And so staying on top of this and staying in communication with all these folks is something that's very important for us. We had as an example of that, last year, there was a sort of a breakout session on silicon carbide that included speakers from both the customer community as well as the supplier community. And there was a lot of very good information exchanged both ways in that forum. And that's something that benefit us greatly, and also the kind of thing that we'll hopefully have more of this year as well.
Okay, so in terms of helping customers with various pain points, I mean, you've outlined there in terms of the technologies that you're developing that will help them. But I'm also wondering, I mean, you might want to say more about those, but also we've got sort of industry issues like sustainability, the ongoing supply chain issues potentially, and the skill shortage. So just any thoughts as to ways in which, if those are pain points for your customers, first of all, and if there's anything you're doing to help them with those, and or as you say already, the technology side of things, if that's not too much of a question to ask.
Yeah. Actually, sustainability is also a very hot topic for us right now. A lot of our customers are, say, startup type customers that are, I would say, very conscientious about environmental sustainability, and those, so they bring up those questions with us. I just got off a call this morning with sort of a CHIPS Act funded startup for silicon carbide, and they asked about some of the products and the solutions that we offer specifically for water consumption reduction. And that's just an example from this morning, but it's a common topic for us in conversations with nearly all of our customers. A lot of our customers, say in the compound semiconductor space, are outside of the U.S. And my perception, at least, has been that from a sustainability standpoint, the European community is probably farther down the road on that topic, and more keen on addressing those issues than, say, at potentially other parts of the world. A lot of our customers are startups or government research, and I think a lot of that influence is coming, from the government level to say, hey, these are things that if we're, say, going to issue grant money or something like that as part of this, they want those types of considerations to be front and center as part of that whole area of activity. as far as what we are doing, I would say we have taken some pretty significant leading strides in addressing sustainability. If you look at, so our new products are, we actually evolved from what was originally an engineering focused refurbisher and technical upgrade developer for legacy tools. But now more recently, we've become our OEM for our own proprietary products that have proven to be very well performing and competitive in the industry, particularly in the area of advanced materials like compound semiconductors. And so, you know, one of the driving thoughts behind that is we bring a state-of-the-art platform to an existing market, say 200 millimeter CMP, obviously a very mature market, but the other products that are out there tend to be more legacy type tools because the large OEMs tend to focus more on just 300 millimeter high volume. And so if you look at, say, water consumption as an example, typically our tools, and a lot of it's enabled by advanced technology and new design, but we can say in terms of water consumption, we can consume, you know, 5 to 10 times less water, say, than a legacy type of a CMP tool in this case, or post CMP cleaner. If you look at the energy that our tools consume, again, in terms of efficiency, because it's advanced, you know, absolutely state-of-the-art technology, much less wiring in the tools, much less power consumption, much more efficient use of power, you know, for larger loads inside the tool. So we're doing a lot of things in that area, and I think it's really, that also is something that's being really well received by the customer community. Another thing that we're working on now in the area of silicon carbide is the biggest cost of ownership. CMP is an expensive process. It's typically considered to be one of the top 2 or 3 most expensive processes in the fab. And part of that is because it has consumables that get consumed during the process, and so that's a recurring expense. But for the biggest cost of ownership for, say, silicon carbide CMP is the slurry cost. And so now what we're doing is working with the consumables supplier community to look at ways to actually reclaim and recycle that slurry, which would be, one, it's a huge cost savings in terms of the cost of ownership of the process, but it also greatly reduces by potentially up to, say, an order of magnitude reduction in just the consumption of these chemicals and the volume of waste that needs to be treated, depending on the type of chemical that's used in the slurries. So we are, I think, on the leading edge of several of these things, which are really, really going to drive significant improvements in sustainability, as well as, you know, in a commercial sense, cost of ownership.
Okay, and you mentioned there, I think, startup company referenced the CHIPS Act, and just in terms of the CHIPS Act, obviously the US has got its version of the CHIPS Act, the EU has a CHIPS Act. Is that something you're noticing in terms of customers you're bumping into, or ways in which you can, is the sort of onshoring, reshoring, whatever you want to call it, is that a thing that you're noticing, and it's an opportunity for yourselves to help your customers with that?
Yeah, a great question. I would say right now, and this anecdotal example I just shared with you would be indicative of that. I mean, we're just starting to sort of see the government investment in our industry really start to have some influence. You know, I don't know how much you know about the CHIPS Act, but it's done in multiple tiers or phases. And the first phase was really to say underwrite or subsidize the very large IDMs. So there's, you know, if you look at say Intel would be an example, Micron, Samsung. I mean, that's, at least from what I see in the media, the lion's share of the investments to date have been made in those areas of our industry, and that is not an part of the industry that we serve currently. We're much more focused on more advanced leading edge types of applications, materials, and typically all of that really tends to occur at 200 millimeter diameter and smaller wafers. And so those, I think that phase of the investment from the CHIPS Act is now just starting to reach our customer community.
And in terms of your own roadmap, beyond Semicon West, it'd be good if you can share anything. You know, clearly you're not going to give away too many sort of trade secrets, but anything you can give us, and I know recently you've had I think it's $12.5 million investment or funding. So it'd be good just to understand a little bit about that and where that money is potentially going to go in terms of your plans for the future.
Yeah, so we have a lot of discussions with our partners, customers, suppliers, and whatnot. We have a very well-defined roadmap, and we've been executing on the roadmap for, I would say, the past couple of years, to the point where I think we have established a very significant leadership position, head start, if you will, in the areas that we are most focused on, which would certainly include advanced materials, compound semiconductors. And we have still a very fertile pipeline of new technologies that we're still developing. And I think one of the key advantages for us and our constituents is being a smaller company than, say, a large 300 millimeter OEM. We can go through cycles of, sort of coming up with new ideas, testing those ideas, making, salient observations based on that testing, and then turning that into product development that really improves the performance of the equipment and the process capabilities. Certainly the investment that we secured recently is really going to help us, I would say, not necessarily accelerate, but maintain that very fast pace of agility and nimbleness in bringing new technologies and products to the market, which I think is, again, a key niche for us. And it also will help us, invest in, along with the development pipeline that we invest in heavily, we also develop heavily in IP protection. And so the funding will definitely help in those areas significantly, which again has been a key focus of mine in growing the company's area over the past 5 years or so. And so this funding will help us with that. Also, we need to scale our manufacturing capability, which we've been doing on an ongoing basis. But with the growth in our sales, it's a lot of it is working capital. As the company is growing at a very steep slope, that puts a lot of demands on and strains on available working capital. And so that's something that we're trying to proactively address with this investment. So yeah, we think, and I like to say that the investors, I think this was even mentioned in a press release, was they actually went out and studied. These are very tech savvy, seasoned veterans in our industry with very good track record. And so it's not just a financial investment, it's more of a strategic technology investment, I would say. And they went out and studied the market very carefully, closely, actually went out and talked to customers and said, we're interested in electrification and compound semis and this type of thing. They're very well educated on those topics, and they went out and actually spoke to the customer community and said, hey, where do you see opportunities for growth and investment and whatnot? And apparently multiple customers mentioned us specifically. So yeah, they're very savvy investors. They're very well connected in the industry, that very, the high executive levels of other suppliers, customers, as well as the investment community. And so it's a very important investment and collaboration for us, both financially and strategically.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so obviously they're supplying some capital, but also you say they've got a wealth of sort of experience, knowledge of the industry. So you're hoping to sort of leverage that, or they're bringing that to the party as well to help you. I mean, clearly with your experience, you know the industry very well, but that they've got some experience as well, that, as you say, you can collaborate and maybe develop the company in, I don't know whether it's different directions or just faster because of the expertise they bring. Is that right?
Absolutely, 100% correct. Yeah, and I would say that the value, if you say what is the value proposition or the contribution between the financial investment, which is obviously not trivial, as well as the contributions that they're making in terms of industry knowledge and experience and relationships and networking. Yeah, it would be hard for me to put say which one of those two is of more value to us, because there's so much value in both of those aspects, which makes it a very, very, very positive development for our company. Absolutely.
And just in terms of other development plans, obviously the technology side of things sounds as if you've got that very much covered and more in the pipeline. Just in terms of developing the company's presence, are there any plans to grow in terms of different geographical regions or into different sort of application areas, or is it very much the technology first and then see where that takes you?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, so traditionally most of our business has been domestic in the U.S. And some, smaller proportions in Europe and Asia. Because of the new products we have now and where a lot of that activity is taking place, I would say we have more of our customer activity and revenue now is coming from Europe. And I think that's because, again, they're sort of maybe a little bit ahead in say adopting, or pushing electrification trends, sustainability. And so that's more of our business today than it has been traditionally. The other big opportunity that we see, and this is something we're just going public with as we speak here, is we have not had any market participation in China, but that we're currently very actively, I would say, exploring and soon probably take some pretty decisive steps toward pursuing sales in China in earnest.
Okay, so maybe in summarizing, it sounds as if you're very optimistic about the future, if I understood what you're saying correctly. Is there anything, on the other side, is there anything that makes you slightly nervous about where any issues in the industry, or is it for you only see sort of positives ahead? I know the mantra is it 1 trillion by 2030 or 2031, whatever. Is that all upside, or is there, do you foresee any little sort of molehills along the way, shall we say?
Well, from being in this industry as long as I've been, definitely always on the lookout and not to be caught off guard by the ups and downs, the cyclicality of our industry. And sort of to that point, we have all employee meetings on a fairly regular basis monthly. And, everything that's been talked about in terms of the electrification trend, silicon carbide has been, very bullish growth projections for that market space. And I actually sort of and our employees are, they hear this from our communication meetings. They also pay attention to what's written in the media. And so I sort of gave a caution to everybody. I said, hey, everybody projects that we're going to be growing at a 35% CAGR for the foreseeable future. The numbers vary, but they're typically in that range. And that, that will be the trend overall over an extended period of time. But again, having learned from being in the industry so long, I've said there will be ups and downs along the way. It's not just going to be a straight line up and to the right, and we're experiencing that currently with the dip in sales. It's very publicly covered, the dip in sales of electric vehicles, which starting to look now like that was more of an aberration than a trend, because now all of a sudden with the announcements that have come out from even the large U.S. automobile manufacturers, that they are seeing very strong record-setting growth in EV sales just in the early part of this year. So, but yeah, those are always a concern in the back of my mind. Is there will be cyclicality and ups and downs in our industry, but I think overall, if I compare it to where our industry was, and other people have shared the same opinion, like this is almost semiconductor 2.0. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, it was a very heady time for our industry. There was just unchecked growth, right? It was just everybody was, as semiconductor technology became more prevalent. But now I think with all these advanced materials and what's going on around the world geopolitically, electrification, sustainability, it's almost likely, in my mind and others, I think that this could even surpass, the early days of our industry, which were very exciting and dynamic. I think with all the things that are coming up now in the foreseeable future, I think it could even surpass, you know, that time period. So yeah, it's a very exciting time to be in the industry. The other thing is, I think is a huge growth driver is the fact that with all the geopolitical tensions going on, now we say, you know, semiconductors are the new oil, right? I mean, everybody has to make sure they have a supply of energy resources because our lives depend on it. Now I think all these governments are saying, okay, now we're in the same boat with semiconductors. We have to have our own sustainable supply chain of these key technologies for their future security. And so, you know, that's just going to drive more capacity in our industry as well as sort of redundancy, you know, and whatnot. So I expect that's going to be another huge growth driver for us. And I think that's a rising tide should help everyone.
Yeah, it's been great to chat and some brilliant insights into what's going on both at your own organization and, you know, in the industry more widely. But at least for now, Dan, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate again some very good questions there, Phil. I really appreciate the discussion.
Thanks again.
Okay.